Welcome. I'm Kristen, and this is the Simple, Handmade, Everyday podcast where I talk about living a creative, intentional life. I like to chat about quilting, knitting, what I'm reading and watching, and even a little bit about keeping a cozy, organized home. You can find me online at my blog, Simple Handmade Everyday at kristenesser.com, or on Instagram at kristenesser. I've got my cup of tea in hand, so let's settle in for a chat. Welcome to episode 15. I have to confess that I almost didn't record today because I feel like I'm not sure that I accomplished enough in the last 2 weeks to have much to talk about. But as is my way, I sat down and made some notes and, I can make stuff up as I go. Now, some stuff got done, maybe not as much as I wanted to, but I have to say that I am enjoying fall so much. It was 48 degrees here in Southern California this morning when I left for my walk. And while I know if you live in Michigan, this does not seem like anything to brag about, it is the coldest it's been this year. Now, I also have to add that it will apparently be 88 degrees today at the high. So thank you, fall, Southern California. That's what we've got. But last week it was just beautiful in the high 60s, low 70s. And I just think it's like, that is the perfect weather. I like having doors and windows open, fresh air, cool breezes. Totally. I mean, I'm not unique in this. I feel like universally everybody loves fall. Nobody complains about fall. So I've been enjoying that. I feel like I am settling in to life the way it is with one kid at home and just falling into our routines, which involves my husband and I eating dinner quite a few nights by ourselves. And let me tell you, cooking is simple and cleanup is simpler. And so those are all good things. But I'm still glad that I've got that one kid at home and that the other two are thriving in their environments. But, it's been a fall of transitions, and I just am so happy to sort of be settling in. So I've got my cup of tea. I actually put a link to, in my stories, my Instagram stories, a little thing about brewing this tea. So full disclosure, I signed up as an affiliate for Simple Loose Leaf Tea Company because, they seem right up my alley. So they sent me a box of their tea sampler for free to try, which I am enjoying immensely. So I want to talk about that. So that's full disclosure. They did send this to me. So what's cool about this is that this one is called the Classic Tea Box, and it comes with 4 teas. There's a green tea, an oolong, something called Blue Lady Gray, which is black tea with bergamot, which is what makes something like Earl Grey, but also some lavender. I'm not usually a big lavender fan. I love lavender in general. Not a huge lavender fan in food, but this is really nice. And then the one I haven't tried, because there's probably no caffeine in it, is Blood Orange Herbal, which actually, now that I say that, sounds really good. So it's a mix of black, green, and herbal teas. And one thing that's really cool, so you can see on the back side of it, these little packets, it's clear, and so you can actually see the tea. And these are just like nice big leaves. If you drink tea in tea bags, like Lipton, it's like dust, right? But these are nice. It's like you can see full leaves that are dried and curled up and stuff. So they send you these tiny little mesh bags, super cute, like 2 inches by 3 inches, little drawstring bags, and you make your own tea bag from this. So you put like a scoop of tea in there, you pull the drawstring, put it in your cup. What I've learned about really good quality tea is that you can use the tea bag, you can use the tea more than once. And that's the other way I do that, with the whole leaf tea, is my perfect tea maker from Teavana, where you just put the tea in, pour the water in, and after 3 minutes you set it on top of your cup, and it kind of, I always like to say, it kind of pees into your cup. It triggers this little contraption on the bottom where the tea comes out. So, so now I've got 2 ways to do that. But I can use the tea leaves up to maybe 3 times in a day. If I don't use it, overnight, then I throw it out and I start over the next day. But when you start buying whole leaf tea or loose leaf tea, it's more expensive. I will be honest with you, but if you realize that you're really getting 2 to 3 cup, that you can use these 2 to 3 times, it's really not as expensive as you might think. So the way I guess simple loose leaf tea works is that I double checked this with them on Instagram this morning. You can get a subscription box where you can, customize it however you want. They have several black teas, herbal teas, a mix, whichever. I think you can, change the frequency. But if you don't, and you can join that and then cancel immediately. It's you're not signing up for any amount of time. If you find, oh, I'm not getting through this, you can just cancel it or change the frequency, or you can just buy tea in their tea shop. So anyways, I am enjoying it. It's very nice quality tea. So I'm so glad to sort of have this tea in my arsenal now. So not an ad, they did send me the tea, and I'll put a link in my show notes, which will, full disclosure, be an affiliate link. So I will make, pennies on the dollar to your purchase if you decide to. But I feel like this is a good time to say with all my affiliate links, whenever I, do show notes and I have affiliate links, I make just a little pittance on those, but it does help support the podcast, get a little bit of reimbursement for the time and that I put into this. But I never link to anything that I've not tried and that I don't love. So that is how I feel about affiliate links. So now let's move on to quilting. And this is why I was thinking I do not have enough to talk about. I mentioned last podcast that I did a half rectangle quilt for the Fat Quarter Shop. And that blog post, that sort of blog hop, was supposed to be last week, but apparently there was a typhoon somewhere which has delayed the shipment of the fabrics. I guess they were going to do kits for this fabric, and it delayed the shipment of those fabrics. So that's still to be decided when that's going to drop. The pincushion link up that I'm doing with them will be this week, and so check that out if you get a chance. I have not been doing a ton of sewing, except for the fact that I've been doing a lot of hand piecing lately. You know how I love hand sewing. I've got this just funny little video I did as a complete spontaneous one-off about how hand piecing, kind of calms my mind. If you can hear my dog barking in the background or the neighbors having work done in their house in the background, I apologize, but such is life over here right now. So back to the hand piecing. So I love to hand piece. I love that it's portable, that I can do it in front of the TV, that I'm not always in front of a machine. And there is something about the rhythmic nature of the way the running stitch that you do that is very calming to the mind. And I feel like I've read studies. They definitely have studies about knitting, which is that same sort of rhythmic motion with your hands can calm the mind, and it can be very meditative. It's good for your brain. I'm sure you've all heard that, as you get older and we're all trying to make sure that we don't get Alzheimer's and dementia and those kinds of things. And things like quilting and knitting, they keep your brain engaged. It's exercise for your brain. So anyway, so this is a lot of what I like about hand piecing. And you don't have to get up and iron all the time. And it just is slow stitching. I love that. So I'm super happy to kind of give you a little a sneak peek announcement that Patty over at Elm Street Quilt and I are putting together a quilt along for January 2019. And it's going to be a hand piecing quilt along. So if you have ever thought, I'd kind of like to do that, but I don't know where to start. Gee, that looks hard. I don't really want to tackle a whole gigantic quilt because I just know I'll never finish it. I'd like to do that, but I feel like I need some help and support. This is totally going to be your thing, and I hope that you will join us. I know a lot of people have contacted me through YouTube and the blog and email saying, I'd really like to know more about hand quilting. So there's going to be a blog post announcing this with more of the details, and then again more details in January. But I just kind of wanted to let you guys know that this is coming. I'll tell you just a little bit about it. It's going to be a smaller quilt because, come on, we all have lives, and I really am hoping that people go all the way with it. It's a 9-block quilt, and there are 4 building block, like skill builder blocks. There's just your 4-patch, half square triangle, flying geese, quarter square triangle. And then the other 5 blocks are sort of built on those basic skill builder blocks. And I am hoping to do some, and I'll say it right now so that maybe I will really do it. I really want to do some more videos, because, when you're talking about this kind of stuff, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And a video, maybe 10,000 words. I don't know. But it really helps to see things. And the skills are, there's very few. It's just, how do you start? How do you do the running stitch? How do you knot it off? How do you handle seam allowances? And in so much of these kinds of things are personal preference. Do you like short needles? Do you like long needles? Do you wear a thimble? How many thimbles do you wear? Do you wear one on each hand? So these are all kinds of things that we'll talk about. Oh, and the other thing that I want to tell you about the Quilt Along is that there will be weekly link ups for people so that you can make your block, because it's 1 block a week, and it's 1 block, and it'll take an hour or 2, depending on how fast you are, and there will be weekly prizes, and we have all these awesome sponsors, and so there'll be weekly prizes for you to link up, and it'll be a random drawing, and then some grand prizes at the end. So it's going to be super fun. I hope that you join us. Make sure that you check out my blog for details, and Patty over at Elm Street Quilts. I will put a link in the show notes. And if you kind of want to get to know her a little bit better, she was just on the Pat Sloan podcast, American Patchwork and Quilting. I'll put a link in the show notes to that. She hosts something called One Monthly Goal, which one of these days I'm going to do. But it's a way to kind of set your intentions about what you want to accomplish in a month. And there's link ups and prizes for that too. So that might be a way for you to keep on track with something like this Quilt Along. So you say, my goal for this month is to do, at least 2 of the blocks. And then if you do that, you can link up at the end and, possibly earn more prizes. Thanks to all of you that entered the Quilters Planner giveaway. I picked the winner this morning, and her name is Susie. All I have is an email address, not an Instagram handle or anything. So I will be emailing her, and she can get her free Quilters Planner, and you are going to love it. The last thing that I want to talk about on the quilting side of things is, this is just like this random little tidbit of, I was scrolling Instagram this morning, as one does, and I came across Center Street Quilts. Her name is Christina. She's an amazing quilt designer, and she launched a pattern today called Geometric Leaves, and it is I think it's a foundation paper piecing pattern, and it's available on our Etsy shop and Craftsy. I have no idea how much, but they are so cool. These leaves are so cool. I feel like they would make such an amazing table runner or fall throw pillow. So I think maybe I'm going to pop over and pick one of those up, but I encourage you to look at it. She has no idea I'm telling people this, but it was just such a cute and striking pattern. So, and it would be such a great way to use up scraps. If you sort your scraps by color, like she had one that was red, one that was yellow, one that was orange, and it would be such a perfect way to use up scraps. So, the one other thing I did actually want to mention is, have you tried a wool pressing mat? So, Precision Quilting Tools sent me one, this 17 by 17, 100% wool ironing mat. And so the idea with these is that it's almost like pressing from both sides. The wool, when you press with an iron, the wool sort of pulls that heat through it. And so you know how things are flatter once they're cool, right? So it pulls that heat through, and it makes your blocks so flat. It is amazing. And I was a little skeptical that it would really work, but it does. So I want to say that I put something in my stories when the first day I received it, and I got several messages of people saying these things, there's many brands, but I really like this one, Precision Quilting Tools. I have this, did I say this already? The 17 by 17, which is a nice size because you can put it like next to your sewing machine. And it's thick enough. I think it's like a 1/2 inch thick. what does mine say? It's a 1/2 inch, and it's very dense. So you can use it, as your ironing station. People say don't put it on top of your cutting mat, because if you do a lot of ironing, it pulls moisture through. It can warp your cutting mat. So you don't want, maybe you want to do that. But so many people said, I love it and it works really well, but it smells like a barnyard. It smells horrible. And I have to say that I have not had that. I was totally braced for that. I have not had that problem with this brand. I've also heard, and it says on there, where does it say it? Maybe it was on the back, that they don't really recommend using steam or starch on it. And it has been hypothesized that the steam, getting the wool wet, is what makes it smell like a barnyard. Somebody said they have one that was like stinking up their whole sewing room. And I've not had that problem. I'm not using steam. I'm just using a hot iron, and my blocks have never been flatter. I really like it a lot. So that's it for quilting. So now I'm going to weave my tale of woe about knitting. I should just drop this segment of the podcast. So I have been knitting on my tea leaf sweater. So sick of hearing about this, right? And so I was coming down the last sleeve, I did the cuff, and I had even texted a friend and I said, I am vaguely scared that I should have counted stitches on this sleeve to make sure it was the same as the first sleeve that I did, but I did them so long apart, and there were decreases, and that means math, and so I just didn't. I said, I'm vaguely terrified that these two sleeves are not going to be the same size. So I finish it up, I bind off, I put it on. Yeah, they are not the same size. As a matter of fact, I'm not even 100% sure which one's right, but one is very fitted and, down to the cuff, and the other one had some room. So I first assumed that I messed up the one that had room, and then I was a little mad, and I just started ripping it out. It's like I had even knotted off the yarn to before I would weave in the end, just a little slip knot, and I'm having trouble getting that out. And I like ripped it out in the most angry way. And then I went over to Ravelry, and I started looking around at the pictures of completed projects, and I realized, oh, you know what? I think that was the sleeve that was right. Oh, I'm so frustrated with this sweater. It is really the first true sweater I've knit. I've knit one other sweater. It was from Charmed, and it was the Weasley sweater. It was a child sweater that I did for Jonah one year, and I even did the duplicate stitch of the little J on the front, so he looked like he was a member of the Weasley family, which he kind of does anyways, with the red hair and freckles. So the whole body of the sweater and the really cool yoke on it, I did that. That was no problem. But honestly, the first sleeve also, I did not do the greatest job of when I even put the sleeve on. There's some like holes. When you do socks and sleeves, when you join them, it can be a little tricky to get everything tight. And I've just always thought, I can go back and I can stitch those up. It'll be fine. And now there's part of me that's thinking about ripping both sleeves completely off. I don't know how I can do that, because some of those stitches were held on waste yarn, and I don't know. I'm definitely going to rip them both back to before the decreases, and then count stitches and pay attention and be a good knitter. So obviously this is not probably even going to be done this winter. It's certainly not going to be done so that I can bring it to my daughter when I visit her in Norway in a couple of weeks. But yeah, sometimes I wonder why I knit. And that is the scary thing about knitting garments, is that yarn is really expensive. And fit is very personal. And you have to, frankly, I think the reality is that you have to make a lot of mistakes and then learn from them to be good, to learn what works and what fits, and that you should really make notes about how many stitches are on your sleeves at the end. So yeah, I shoved it in a plastic bag and a basket, and I'm going to throw it in the back of the closet for a while. And I was thinking about casting on a pair of socks because, yay, socks. But in reality, I'm doing the hand piecing, and I'm sewing up these blocks now so that we can show you the quilt in January. And so that's going to take that sort of handwork time for me. But it does open up a lot of TV time for me, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But I feel like there are certain times of day that I really do handwork. Sometimes early in the morning, definitely in the evenings, and so that can either be filled by hand piecing or knitting. And hand piecing definitely is going to take precedence right now. Another thing that kind of suffers when I'm really into things like handwork and stuff is reading time. These, little hobbies, they all take up that precious spare time that we have. So I try to kind of, balance it out a little bit so that I don't get burned out on any one thing. But I mentioned last week that I'm reading this book by the author Kathy Kelly, and I was about halfway done then. I am almost done now, and I am happy to report that I am still loving it. It's The House on Willow Street. Maybe it's not in front of me right now. I think that's what it's called. And it's turning out to be quite good, and I'm definitely going to read more by that author. So I'll put a link in the show notes to that. And so that's the only thing, that's my fiction book for right now. But the other book that I wanted to talk about is not new in any way, but in the mornings, I get up early, get my coffee. That's the time of day that I do my devotions. I try to stay off of social media rather unsuccessfully many days, but I like to have some kind of more inspirational things to read during that time. And the book that I dug out recently that I am very much enjoying reading again is Simple Abundance by Sarah Ban Breathnach. And it's called Simple Abundance, A Daybook of Comfort and Joy. And this was a very popular book back, let's see, I've got it right here, and I'm going to tell you that the copyright is 1995. And it follows the calendar. And so you just open up to the day, for, October 16th, for instance. And she just has like a little essay about it. And it's very, I don't know, how do I explain it? It's very inspiring. It helps you to think about slowing down, appreciating life, being creative. Like here, let me just read some of the titles of the days. Bloom Where You're Planted, The Gourmet Victory Garden, Cooking for Comfort, A Seasonal Feast, Meditative Handwork. Oh my gosh, that was August 27th. I never read that one. Home Art, it's very home-based. A Lesson from Loss. So these are some of the topics, and it's just kind of the perfect thing to kind of start your day. It's simple, inspirational reading. So if you've never read it, I definitely encourage you to. I think the first time I read it, I checked it out from the library, and then at some point, I'm pretty sure I picked this up at a thrift store or a library sale. But I've really been enjoying that book. Now, a lot of you mentioned, I took a picture one day of how my reading stack was getting out of control, and I do have so many books that I want to read and not so much time, and people started saying, well, do you listen to audiobooks? And I do, but I'm curious if you listen to audiobooks and how you do it. I currently do not subscribe to Audible. Now, I have bought some Audible books, as I've bought, sometimes when you buy a book from Amazon, you can get the Audible recording for free, or for not free, but inexpensively. And Audible does have amazing quality recordings. The narrators are usually just amazing. But I don't belong to that. And I feel like we subscribe to enough things right now that I'm not sure I really want to add that to the budget. And our library, I live in a fairly smallish town, and our library is honestly kind of terrible. It's okay because I can get interlibrary loan for print books, but for audiobooks, they don't offer that. And so they have a pretty limited selection of audiobooks. And I used to have I think it's called Overdrive app on my phone, and that's how you kind of download those audiobooks from the library. I always thought the interface was kind of funky. I've never really liked that. So are there other ways to get audiobooks besides, just belonging to something like Audible or getting them from your library? I'm curious if you have any suggestions there, because I would definitely listen to more audiobooks. Now, the two things that I do like to listen to are the Quilt Fiction podcast. I don't know if you've been listening to that. That's an amazing podcast put out by Frances from the Off Kilter Quilt, and it's it's the one she's doing right now is Friendship Album 1933, and it's an awesome story about women kind of Depression era who are all entering quilts in the Sears Quilting Contest. And it's she's putting out a chapter or two a week, and it's read by Frances, who I could listen to read the phone book. I love her voice. And there's like this great music, the intro and outro, that it's a wonderful podcast. So I love that. But, it's like it's not enough. I need more things to listen to. I also listened to, for years, and I haven't done it, the Craft Lit podcast. And her name is Heather Ordover, and she's a knitter and a former English teacher. And so she will take a classic book that she is using the LibriVox recording that is free in the public domain. And she does a few chapters at a time, and then it's like a little 10-minute English class where she will talk about, like, for instance, Tale of Two Cities. She will, just kind of tell you kind of what's going on in the time period, words you might not know, like things you might not really culturally or societally that you might not understand. These kinds of things that are fun about English classes. So I've listened to Pride and Prejudice, Age of Innocence, Frankenstein, Dracula. She's done all kinds of books that I wouldn't even, like Frankenstein and Dracula are not the stories that I thought they were. When you go back and read the original ones, movies have done completely different things with those. So I do listen to the Craftlit podcast. I'm kind of listening to the County of Monte Cristo right now. So that's fun and that's free. But if you have any other suggestions, I would love to hear them. In the absence of something to listen to when I sew, I watch something, usually on my iPad. And I mentioned in the last podcast that I had started watching Poldark, and I completely binge watched the whole season in the last 2 weeks, and I loved it. I love that show. As I was watching it, I was thinking, I may have been like misleading, or I said it took place in the American Revolution. I also used the word period piece like 1,000 times, and I apologize for that. It starts off American Revolution, but it is not based in America. It's Poldark comes home as, the English lost the war, back to England, and the whole thing takes place mostly in Cornwall, which is a place that I really need to visit someday. So many of my favorite stories have come from Cornwall, including Poldark, and Rosamund Pilcher writes about Cornwall in several of her books that I love, Winter Solstice, and oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the other book that I love so much. I will put it in the show notes because it is completely escaping me. But anyways, so if you're not watching Poldark, do it. Go back, start from the beginning. And so that's season 4. I hear there's going to be a season 5, and then that'll be it, which will be sad. I'm plugging away at Call the Midwife, season 7. Not too much going on there. But the other dark horse in this shows that I'm watching, obviously, I love, the Downton Abbeys, the Victoria, the Paradise, all of these period pieces. Let me say that word again. But I also, there's shows that I start watching with my family. So where you're watching TV with teenagers. I think I've mentioned before that as a family, with teenagers, we watch The Office, Parks and Rec, Seinfeld, and it's so fun to relive these shows with kids. Right now, we're watching 30 Rock, which is pretty funny. Over the years, I've watched The Flash, and it's funny because I am the only one that really loved The Flash, and I'm the only person that has continued to watch it and am completely sort of caught up. So it's pretty weird that I would like a superhero show. That's totally not my jam normally, but I do love The Flash. I kind of like Arrow, and so my friend recommended Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I have watched, and this is in the same universe as The Avengers and Captain America, that whole thing. And I've seen those movies because I have teenagers. I just enjoy them. I watch them. They kind of go over my head. It's like I couldn't tell you much about them. Could not tell you the plot of any one of them. But I started watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and I'm only a few episodes in, but it's quite delightful. And I'm pretty sure that I'm going to try to get Ben to watch it with me, who's not also really into superhero movies very much or shows, but it's pretty fun. And so that's the other kind of weird show that I'm watching right now. And, one plug again for obviously, if you're not watching This Is Us, what is wrong with you? Catch up, watch it. Acting amazing. The storytelling is amazing. The whole thing, could not love it more. On the homemaking side of things, today I just kind of wanted to share with you some things I've been thinking about. I have a friend that we've been talking about kind of who we were and what we were into like 10, 12 years ago. And so this is, more in the heavy parenting years. All the kids are in elementary school or younger and home. And I didn't work, full-time stay-at-home mom. And that's when like the blogging thing was really in, kind of heavy. It was before other forms of social media. And I was really into reading Soul Mama. I never really got into Pioneer Woman, but a little bit. And Heather from Beauty That Moves. Just a lot of these natural, simple living kind of blogs. And I got really into being very environmentally conscious. I kind of moved plastic as much as possible out of our house, brought in, kind of the glass, I want to call them Tupperware containers. I went through and I hooked all of our electronics onto power strips that we would then shut down at night so there'd be no phantom, energy loss during the day, during night, and, just was a little bit fanatical. My kids were all a little glad that I calmed down a bit after a while. I was very into making everything from scratch. I was making bread from scratch. We composted, all those kinds of things that are all good things to do, but a bit labor intensive to keep up with. And some of them kind of slipped over time. And now that I feel like I might have a little bit more bandwidth available, and we're getting some, scary reports about the environment and climate change. I think obviously there need to be big changes made, but what every individual person does matters, in my opinion. So I'm kind of coming back to these ways, and I'm going to do it a little bit over time. But the one thing that sort of immediately jumped out to me is I'm a Trader Joe's shopper. I love Trader Joe's. I'm passionate about Trader Joe's. I'm not a coupon clipper. I feel like Trader Joe's has good ingredients at very reasonable prices, and I trust them. And so the one issue with Trader Joe's shopping is that most of their produce is wrapped in plastic. And this has always kind of bothered me, but I like that. That's my, I go to Trader Joe's once a week. I menu plan for the week. I go on Saturdays, I do my big shop for the week, and that's it. And I, for a long time really wasn't interested in adding anything else to the mix here. I used to get a CSA box, which I felt very holier than thou about that, zero packaging. And I thought I would be the person that found out, looked up recipes for how to use these obscure vegetables. But in reality, after the novelty wore off, those obscure vegetables just got thrown away at the end of the week. And so that was no good. And that was the end of the CSA box. But I started looking into the CSA box again, and I might experiment with it. But what I can do is not buy all of my produce at Trader Joe's. And there's a Whole Foods. I live across the street from a conventional grocery store, but there's also a Whole Foods that is not far from the Trader Joe's where I shop. And so I went there. And I used to I made all these little net bags years ago that you can put your produce in, so that they can weigh it. And I went to look for those, and I've been pushing them aside in the trunk of my car for 5 years. And now that I want them, I don't know what I've done with them. Apparently I took them out. So I did buy one package of those little net bags at Whole Foods, and which only held, like 3. There was a package of 3. And so then I just put my 6 onions loose in the basket and my thing of broccoli just loose in the basket, and did very quickly, did all my shopping for produce. And nothing seemed really overly expensive. I think that Amazon has really helped them bring their prices down a bit. And I played around with trying to do my whole kind of shopping trip there, but there are definitely other things on the list that are way more expensive at Whole Foods. Kefir, Ben drinks kefir, and it is twice the price at Whole Foods, but other things were about the same price or maybe 20 cents more. So I did the produce shopping there and then went to Trader Joe's and then, just got any of the other kinds of things that are my normal shopping. So that felt pretty good. So then I felt inspired and I went to Joann's and I bought 2.5 yards of what's it called? Of tulle netting. And on Sunday, I just sat down and I made up 10 of those little produce bags because number one, I just needed more. But number two, I wanted to be able to have enough that, I can take my 4 peppers that I bought and I can just put that bag of them in the crisper drawer and not create a new problem in my crisper drawer. So that was, that's good. And I'll see how that goes next week. So I've got I've got now 13 of those bags because I bought 3. And I even made out of muslin a little bag for bulk things. So I bought like some black beans and I didn't know what to put them in last week. I used the paper bag instead of the plastic. I'm trying to use less plastic, but I did a little muslin bag and I have some vinyl that I had for some other project. And I saw this somewhere and I sewed on a little patch of vinyl on top, clear vinyl on top of this little muslin bag that you can write the number, for if you buy, beans or rice or whatever bulk. So I'm going to try to do more things bulk and just kind of get the plastic out of my shopping. And that's the first step. And I'll kind of let you know as things progress. I'm going to mix up some bread dough, some pizza dough, that 5-minute dough that you kind of mix up and you can just put it in your fridge and then pull it out when you need it, that we're going to use for pizza dough this week. I used to make my own pizza dough, especially when I had a bread maker, but at some point, Trader Joe's has pizza dough for like $1.25 or something. I think it was $1 a little ball when it first came out, and I thought, well, that's so much easier. But you know what? It's wrapped in plastic, and it would be just so much better to make it at home where it's got no plastic. So those are just kind of some of the little changes that I'm thinking about. Before I wrap up, I did want to say thank you to Dog Walking Mama for leaving a review on iTunes. I should have mentioned her last week, so I'm so sorry about that. And also BP Knits 2 also left a review on iTunes. I very much appreciate ratings and reviews. It really helps other people find the podcast. So please, if you enjoy the podcast, feel free to share it, rate it, review it. I really appreciate it. And that is about it for this week. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope that you took some time for yourself while you're listening to maybe drink a cup of tea or coffee, do some sewing or knitting or exercising, whatever makes you happy. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time.